Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful Reedville neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts. We're so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids podcast family. We don't want you to miss an episode, so please be sure to subscribe to the show. We have two wonderful guests for you today. Leslea Wahl, the author of The Perfect Blind Side, is back to share some great suggestions for books we might want to read with our older kids. And Elizabeth Rudd from Compass and Fork is going to take us to Peru to teach us how to make scalloped potatoes. Hey, for all the authors that are listening out there, I wanted to share with you this great email that we received here at the Reading with Your Kids podcast from Dr. Linda Mubarak. She is a past guest and the author of Maxine's New Job. Here's the email. Dear Fatima and Jed, good news! Maxine's New Job has been nominated to receive the prestigious Henri Award at the 2018 Christian Literacy Awards for Outstanding Literacy Work in the Children's Book Division. I sincerely believe your certifying Maxine as a great read helped bring increased social media attention to the book. Thank you for the exposure and the great marketing. We are so happy for Dr. Linda Mubarak that her book, Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, Maxine's New Job, received this prestigious recognition. We would love to help your book receive that same kind of recognition. If you are interested in having your book considered for our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button, send us a note, and we'll send all the information back to you, or you can go right to our Certified Great Read page on our website. It's fun, it's easy, and it is really an effective way to let the world know that your book stands out above all the rest. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. Joining us right now from the beautiful state of Colorado. You've heard her on this show before. We have such a fun time talking about great reads for our teenagers. Please welcome back to the show the author of The Perfect Blind Side, Leslea Wahl. Leslea, how are you?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you back. It's always fun. Leslea is a writer of YA books, and she especially writes YA books with Catholic themes. And it's exciting to talk to her about some great books that we can read or co-read with our kids that have values that are important to us.
Yeah, I always loved being able to, when my kids were home, to share the stories, and there's so many great discussion opportunities that come up with them. Mm-hmm. So it's good.
Yeah, as we're talking here, I'm reminded of something one of our guests in the past said, Eva Wong Nava. She said, sometimes kids will listen to a book more than they'll listen to their parents. So while we're trying to instill these values with our kids, maybe sometimes it's instead of sitting down and just letting them tune you out as you're just going over and over and over, maybe sometimes it would be easier for everybody to just sit down and share a great book that talks about some of the values that we hold dear.
That's very true. And it reminds me of something that just happened the other day. A friend asked if I had suggestions for her son, and so I told her a bunch of different ones. And one of them was like the Percy Jackson series. And she said, oh, he suddenly picked it up. I've been telling him for a year to read that, and it wasn't until I said, this author friend of mine recommends it, then he finally picked it up. So sometimes it's good to have recommendations from other people besides the parents as well.
Absolutely. And, one of the things I do, and sometimes when you're with over a family member's house, or you're with over somebody's house where that you're close to, and they're able to let their guards down a little bit, and you might hear the parents kind of going on with their kids, and the parents and the kids are kind of butting heads over something. Sometimes I'll just sit down with the kid afterwards, and not to lecture but anything, but I just I love what you're doing. I think you're just kind of reinforcing what the parents are talking to their kids about, but hearing it from a different voice, sometimes it's just what the kid needs to be able to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes mom and dad, their words keep coming back to you. Sometimes in the moment, it's hard to listen to them.
Yes.
Because they don't know anything, do they?
No. And that voice, I hear that voice and it becomes invisible in my head.
Yes, very true.
Well, talking about invisible, one of the things kids love to read about is things that can be invisible and things that can fly, and these fantasy worlds that are just fantastic. And you have some great suggestions for fantasy books that our kids may love.
Yes, I do. Actually, little confession, fantasy is not a genre that I have read a lot about, but when I started giving book talks to people, some of the kids came up and said, "Can you tell us about fantasy books?" That was their favorite type of book. So I've started to read more so I can suggest them. Mm-hmm. So that's been kind of a really interesting new types of books for me as well.
Can you give me, people might not click with what the fantasy means when we're talking about books. Just kind of give us a little definition of it, if there is one.
So it's kind of just a slightly different world. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's part of the reason I've been nervous about some, because I don't like when, like an allegory or there's a Christian type book, but it's in a different world, so it feels kind of odd because it's a different God that they're worshiping or something. So I kind of stay away from all those types of books. But these are all ones that have the same Christian values, but kind of unique things, like maybe a dragon in it or an elf or something. But there's fantasy books can kind of have a wide range of things, but I try to keep mine a little bit more Christian oriented. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So what's the first one that we should check out?
Sure. The first one is called Elfling by Corinna Turner. So a little elfling. And Corinna Turner is one of my favorite authors. She is from England, and just a side note, she often has some little words thrown in, some of those English words that are kind of fun to find in her books anyway. But she has an incredible dystopian series I've talked about before, I Am Margaret. Mm-hmm. And she has a fun Jurassic type of short story called Drive. But in Elfling, she has this new world, and I'm always amazed that she is able to create these worlds that have unique technologies, interesting histories, and all this, and it's very impressive. I try to think that I'm creative, but when people write these fantasy worlds, I'm just blown away at how much they come up with. So Elfling is the story of a girl named Sarah Pia, and after the death of her mother, she has been forced to fend for herself on the unforgiving streets of, it seems kind of like London area. And so she's been living on the streets, and she finds this small little dragon, a dragonette, and together they go on this adventure. Now she believes she has a father out there who's still alive, and so she goes on a quest to find him. And very early on she does. I'm not giving anything away, but she learns that he is actually dying. He has a disease. And so Sarah Pia goes on a search for elves that have a healing power. So it's very interesting. Now, I will give a warning because I know some parents get worried about some of the other things. So there are some hints about of sorcery, but it's made very clear that is all evil. Mm-hmm. And the theme is very good versus bad. And she prayed and believed in God. So I think for older teens, this is a great fantasy novel that they might really enjoy.
Cool. When you said elfling, I thought you were talking about me. That's sometimes my wife, when I wake up and I seem especially short some days, she calls me an elfling. But, all right, so Elfling, and that's by Corinna Turner. What else are we looking at?
Yeah, The next one is called Under a Fairy Moon by T.M. Wallace. And this is a Christian story also. It kind of reminded me of A Wrinkle in Time. Kind of had that kind of thing. It was about a young girl also who's kind of whisked away into another world. She goes into this garden, and suddenly she finds herself on this amazing adventure. It was a great writing style, and this book has won numerous awards, which I could understand why, because, again, the creativity of these authors in this genre are amazing. But it's about two main characters, basically, Addie, who I talked about, and then she meets a boy named Connor, and they were both very enjoyable. And I love the fact that the kids were the heroes, and they had all these problems that they had to work together to solve, which was neat. And this is kind of a middle grade fantasy story. Mm-hmm. There's some, again, great messages about right and wrong, treating people well, finding courage, and standing up for what's right. And like I said, there are some fairies and dwarves and elves in the book that she meets. And yeah, that's that one.
I love that message of reminding our kids, especially those middle grade kids, the importance of standing up for what is right. And it just came up again last night in social media. Someone was talking about how so many anti-bullying programs don't work. And in my experiences, as I've traveled around presenting different anti-bullying messages in my magic show, one of the things I realized really early on is going up and reminding kids not to bully. Well, that's important. And reminding kids to stand up and say something if they're being hurt and bullied, that's also important. But what's most effective is talking to those kids in the middle that aren't being bullied, that aren't being a bully, and reminding them how important it is for them to stand up and say something when they see somebody being hurt.
Exactly. Take a stand and when you know right from wrong, and being there for the people who are being bullied.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we have Elfling and Under a Fairy Moon, and do you have another one we should check out?
Yes, this one is called Mercy's Prince, and it's by Katie Huth Jones. And I just love this book. I gotta say, it was such a great adventure novel. So it felt more like an adventure novel set in medieval times, but it has some evil hordes that are these people, these kind of monsters that are attacking, and magnificent dragons. But it's really also kind of a story about this brave, heroic Prince Valerian, and a lovely but powerful young lady named Mercy. And it also has a bit of a romance to it, which maybe is why I like it so much. I don't know. But Mercy has grown up in a brethren colony of pacifists. And I actually grew up in the Mennonite church, so pacifist kind of was in my background. So that was kind of a very interesting thing in the book. And Valerian is the youngest son of the king of the region. So it's kind of interesting. There are two different backgrounds because this is a time when there's a lot of wars and stuff. So he has to be in charge of the armies and stuff, and she has kind of this pacifist view. So that was an interesting part of the story. And I don't want to give much of the plot away, but the unlikely duo, they have to work together to save their country and from these massive hordes, and the dragons help them in a way. So that's really cool. There's quite a few aspects that I really enjoyed. Valerian was this incredible, strong, brave character who was very devoted to his faith. There were plenty of battle scenes that would interest the male readers because, as I said, the Mercy in him had a little bit of a love story that goes on, but it was very sweet and innocent. Although I will say, the boys are reading it, they might want to skip the last 2 or 3 chapters because that's kind of a wedding scene and stuff. So I might not want that as much. But I also found the story very unpredictable. I mean, I read so many books that I often can figure out kind of what's going on and what's going to happen next. But this one really surprised me a couple times. It didn't fall into the typical cliches and storylines. So it was just so enjoyable, and I read it really fast. And she has several other books in this series. So if you get hooked on this one, you can move on to the next.
That is fantastic. Wow. 3 great fantasy books with some great values that you can check out with your kids. Elfling by Karina Turner. Under a Fairy Moon by T.M. Wallace. And Mercy's Prince by Katie Huth Jones. Did I say that name right?
Yes. It's
awesome.
H-U-T-H, so like Ruth. But
okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, one of the great things, Leslea, is the kind of driving force or a really important member of another website where you can find all sorts of great information on books for teens. Remind us what that address is, please, Leslea.
Yeah, it's CatholicTeenBooks.com. And yeah, we have about 13 or 14 authors now with books in multiple genres, all kinds of different age levels. We have some specials for educators even. We now offer book packs for them if they'd like to get books for their school library or their classroom. So it's a great place to go check out more books.
Excellent. And you can also find out a little bit about The Perfect Blind Side while you're there, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Our guest today has been the author of The Perfect Blind Side, sharing some great YA suggestions for you and your teens to check out. Leslea Wahl, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
In just a moment, Elizabeth Rudd from compassandfork.com will be taking us to Peru to teach us how to make some great scalloped potatoes with our kids. Before she does come in, if you are the author of a great children's book, we would love to tell you about our brand new Fun Summer Reads program. This is a great way to promote your book to thousands and thousands and thousands of families this summer. You can learn more about it by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Author Services button at the top of the page, and you'll find out all about it. I am really, really excited. I love food. I love cooking. I'm not a great cook, but I love cooking. I love trying new recipes and learning about people through their food. And we have a wonderful guest on today. She's coming to us from Melbourne in Australia. She is the driving force behind compassandfork.com, a wonderful blog. Please welcome to the show, Elizabeth Rudd. Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to be here.
I'm just looking at your blog right now, and there's just this beautiful slideshow of all these beautiful destinations from all over the world, and Australia just popped up on my screen. I have lots of great friends down in Australia, and in fact, one of my international students from China is now studying in Melbourne, and so I feel this connection with you.
Oh, lovely. We have a lot of international students here, actually. A lot of kids come here to go to school.
Yeah, same with Boston, and I think that's one of the things that I love about meeting people from different countries. I love learning about their differences, but I also love discovering the similarities that we have, and I think we actually have a lot more in common with people around the world than we have differences.
I would agree with that. And actually, food is one of them. We all eat, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I've asked Elizabeth here to tell us about some great recipes from around the world that we can create with our kids, not only to get them just eating and cooking with you, and that's a benefit, but also as a way to start introducing different cultures in different countries and start conversations about different peoples and different cultures with our kids. And today, where are you going to take us today, Elizabeth?
Today we're going to go to Peru.
Excellent, Peru.
Yes. Peru is a very interesting one. They have a very interesting culture around food. Mm-hmm. They love food. And a lot of their food is actually grown in an area called the Sacred Valley, which is grown at very, very high altitude. Most of it is up over 10,000 feet.
Wow, fascinating. So That's now Peru. I'm thinking Peru. That's South America, Latin American country. Are their recipes kind of rice based, like a lot of Latin American countries, or plantain based, like my family from Puerto Rico's are, or is it something different?
A lot of theirs are actually corn and potato based. Corn and potatoes are both actually from Peru. In the case of Peru, there's over 4,000 varieties of potatoes.
Wow, that's amazing. 4,000 varieties of potatoes. I think I know Idaho and red and Maine potatoes. I can't think.
Yes. And in Peru, if you go to the market, it will blow your mind. There are red potatoes, purple potatoes, normal colored potatoes, potatoes with red skins, but actually purple potatoes, when you cut them open, they're purple inside.
You know, I think I had a purple potato not too long ago. And it was surprising good. It was in like a soup.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it was great. So I'm guessing we're making a potato dish.
We are. We're going to make Peruvian scalloped potatoes.
Awesome. Okay, so we need to start off with potatoes. Any particular kind?
Any kind of potato that you would normally roast, like for a baked potato, will actually work for this recipe.
Okay.
So if you head off to the grocery store, you just want a good medium-sized potato, not like the little tiny roasting potatoes, just normal medium-sized potato. And we're going to take about 3 of those and chop them up, rather thinly sliced.
Okay, so do we cut the potato in half first and then slice them, or just go from the whole potato?
You can it's usually easiest if you cut the potato in half and then put the flat end down on the cutting board. This gives you a flat surface rather than trying to hold a potato that will roll. Mm-hmm. And then just cut from one end to the other into thin slices.
Wow. And I think that's something that a kid can do with some supervision and a nice, safe knife.
Yes, I would say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Especially if you do cut it in half and get it so that it's flat. That gives it some support. It won't roll all over the place.
Mm-hmm. That's one of those great tips that seem, once you've been cooking for a while, it's like going, oh, of course, but until you learn that tip, sometimes you're wrestling with a potato or an onion or some kind of round vegetable while it's rolling around the counter and you're trying to cut it.
Yes, and it's interesting because the more we cook, and it's funny, one of the places we find a lot of cooking tips is when we take a cooking class somewhere while we're traveling, and you learn the most fascinating little tips of things, and you go, oh, isn't that obvious? But no, it wasn't before you just told me.
That's right, exactly. Okay, so we have our potatoes. We cut them in half. We cut them into strips. And what's next?
Okay, we also are going to need 1 onion, preferably a red onion, thinly sliced. That might be what Mom wants to do. Onions tend to be a little more difficult to do. And a clove of garlic. And then a bit of cheese, a good melting cheese. So something like a Gruyere or a provolone is probably a good one for this recipe.
I like that this recipe has some options, and so a family can kind of one family can cook it one way, another family can cook it another way, and you can cook it differently using different types of cheeses every time you try it. And that can be a great way to just kind of empower kids, giving them choices.
It can. And that way, and they can taste the differences then with them as well. Also, the spices in this recipe are very mild. There's just oregano, salt, and pepper. So most kids will eat those 3.
Absolutely.
So that makes it quite palatable for children as well.
Okay, so we have the potato cut into slices, red onion, salt, pepper, and oregano, and a cheese, a good melting cheese.
Yeah, and a little bit of garlic. You'll want to cut up 1 clove of garlic.
Okay.
So with that, we just actually start to grease the Pyrex, probably a Pyrex dish or a small casserole dish, preferably not a metal one. A glass one would be better for this recipe. And preheat the oven. Just grease your Pyrex dish, and then we're going to just start to layer the potatoes. potatoes, onions, garlic, and a little slice of the cheese within that bowl. Mm-hmm. And then the secret will be to pour evaporated milk, a cup of evaporated milk over it at the end.
Uh-huh.
And you combine that with 2 eggs. So a cup of evaporated milk and 2 eggs, mix that together, and then pour that over at the top. Add the oregano, salt, and pepper at the top. And then we're just going to bake it in the oven for 45 minutes. So it's pretty easy.
Wow, that is really easy. And there's lots of ways for kids to safely get involved in that. Mixing up the evaporated milk and the eggs, sprinkling on the cheese, layering the potatoes and the onions. And yeah. And then, of course, digging in together as a family.
Correct. And most kids, I know, love potatoes and cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So throw a little evaporated milk in it, and they'll, love it.
Absolutely. Awesome. So that's a recipe for Peruvian scalloped potatoes. We're going to have that listed on our show notes and in our blog. Tell folks where they can find out more about all the different recipes you have on your blog.
You can find us on Compass and Fork. That's the word "and" spelled out. So compassandfork.com. And you can search recipes by course if you want. So breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can search for them easy, hard, medium. You can also search for them by destination. So if you actually want to talk or explore Peru with your children, there's information about traveling in Peru there as well. And then there's recipes, traditional recipes from Peru. So you can have a little bit of a discussion about Peru in general and then make the recipe.
I think a really fun thing to do would just be to pull out a world map. And by the way, for anybody who's young out there, a map is like this piece of paper with the different countries on it. And just challenge your kids to find Peru and especially see where Peru is in relation to wherever you are.
Yes, we've been teaching our nieces and nephews as we travel around the world. We send postcards home. And then Mom helps them find the country on the map.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited. Listen, folks, when you try the Peruvian scalloped potatoes, write in. Let us know which cheeses you used and let us know how much your kids loved it. Elizabeth Rudd from Compass and Fork, thank you so much. I can't wait to try this with my family. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope you enjoy the potatoes.
Please be sure to subscribe to the Reading with Your Kids podcast at the iHeartRadio podcast app, at Spotify, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcast. We are on dozens and dozens of podcasting platforms. We're even on Himalaya, the biggest, most powerful podcasting app in all of Asia. Wherever you are in this world, we would love to have you as a regular listener to the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are always welcoming fantastic guests to the show. This week alone, the next episode, Brooke Van Sickle. She has a wonderful blog that you absolutely want to know about. It's called Journey to Kidlit. It's a great resource for parents. It's a great resource for authors. We're also going to be welcoming Patty Rokas. She is the author of He Is Risen. Rocks tell the story of Easter. And she's also going to tell us how we can create some amazing artwork using rocks with our kids. We're also going to be welcoming Kendara Blake. She is the author of 5 Dark Fates. It's the conclusion of her 3 Dark Crowns series. It's going to be a blast. That's happening this week on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Don't miss an episode. Be sure to subscribe. Hey, we want to thank Leslea Wahl for being here today. We want to thank Elizabeth Rudd for being here today. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife. And I want to thank you. You're the reason we do this. And your kids, they're the reason we do this too. Thank you so much for being part of the show. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.